Good morning, everybody. I'd like to say thank you to Padmasambhava for giving me the opportunity to sort of distill my thoughts about Padmasambhava into a talk. And I'd like to preface the talk by saying, by just letting you know about my length of practice and my knowledge of Padmasambhava. Both of those are relatively short. So I was ordained about 4 months ago, and I picked up Padmasambhava as my sadhana, as my visualization practice. Very happy with that. I've always had an affinity with Padmasambhava. He's an exciting character. He's got skulls. He's got fire. You know, he's a thrilling and, for me, quite a sort of evocative figure. So I was very pleased to be initiated into Padmasambhava practice. And I'm talking a little bit about my initial experience of trying to engage with this transcendental being, and also I'm not talking as a scholar, so I hope I get my facts right. So I thought I would talk. I divide the talk into sort of 3 sections, really, or 3 areas. The theme is Padmasambhava as the agent of change. I thought I'd talk a little bit about Padmasambhava as a historical figure and a historical agent of change, particularly in Tibet, but of course across the Buddhist world. Then explore a little bit about Padmasambhava, the myth, so it's half man, half myth, and some of that, the mythical context in which he's an agent for change. And then I talk about my personal response to Padmasambhava and how he prompts change in me, or how I see him as a catalyst for change for me. So we've already heard about a little bit about the historical context. So in the 8th century, which by my maths is about 1,300 years ago, Tibet wasn't in a good place. The king, Trisong Detsen, had some contact with the Dharma, and he strongly believed that what the people of Tibet needed was Buddhist teachings and practice. So he initially invited an abbot from Nepal to come and to teach the Dharma and to engage in the conversion of Tibet. And despite his best efforts, this abbot, Santarakshita maybe, something like that, wasn't successful. He tried, he was diligent, but the forces in Tibet were stronger than he was. So Tibet at that point, the sort of spiritual needs of people in Tibet were being met by the shamans of a sort of a traditional culture called Bonpa. So there was a lot of veneration of the spirits, shamanistic rites, and the initial attempt to convert people wasn't successful. So Team Tibet, this is Team Tibet, were losing at this point, and they needed a star striker. They needed to bring someone in that was going to, lead the team. Thank you for that, Padmasambhava. Who they invited was a practitioner from a yogi from India, a practitioner, but also a magician and a sorcerer. They needed some extra clout here. They needed someone that could engage with these kind of spirits or demonic forces or strong energies in Tibet. So they invited Padmasambhava to come to Tibet. In the Life and Liberation of Tibet, he acknowledges the invitation, but he sort of wends his way to Tibet. He doesn't sort of immediately go, the king's inviting me, I better go and see the king. He goes to various places, has 3 months here, 3 months there, has retreats, engages with the local deities before arriving in Tibet. And I think that's sort of indicative of his relationship with sort of secular authority. This is a man who is who has a different attitude towards kind of where power and authority exist in the world. And I think that's one of the themes that I quite engage with Padmasambhava. He's a sort of true individual. He doesn't do what you expect him to do, and he doesn't do what he's asked to do. He does what he thinks is necessary and appropriate at the time, and he bows to no one. So when he finally arrives in Tibet, there is and he has his meeting with the King of Tibet. There's a bit of a standoff. So he arrives, they meet each other, and they're both waiting for one or other of them to bow. So the king expects obviously this person who is just he's a yogi from India, but he's not aristocracy, to bow to him as the King of Tibet. And Padmasambhava is looking at the king and thinking, no, I'm not going to bow to you. You need to bow to me. I'm a manifestation of Amitabha. I'm a Buddha. I have this, enlightened consciousness. I'm not going to bow to the king of red-faced barbarians. Is the way he describes the King of Tibet. So they have this standoff, and Padmasambhava eventually ends this standoff by shooting fire from his fingers and setting fire to the King of Tibet's cloak. So then he does bow. I think that moves us on to the mythical figure of Padmasambhava. But that sort of sense of achieving your purpose by any means, I think, is also part of what I engage with Padmasambhava. He doesn't quite do the thing you expect him to do, and he's prepared to use whatever means are at his disposal to move a situation forward, to make a change. And after that, the King of Tibet realises that he's talking to someone who has far greater authority than he does, and Padmasambhava is able to do what he needs to do in Tibet, and he converted Tibet. So as an agent of change in Tibet, he was kind of radical and comprehensive. So I suppose that's the first point I wanted to make. We have this historical figure from 1,300 years ago, who then built up this layer of myth. That's one explanation of who Padmasambhava is. Another is, as we've heard, that he appeared spontaneously on a lotus in a lake, and he was the emanation of the Buddha Amitabha. That he was adopted by the local king, who looked after him as a son for a while, and then he went forth into spiritual life that involved really scary stuff. So Padmasambhava has already talked about how he went forth to stay in cremation grounds, to engage with the spirits, the demons, the flesh-eating Dakinis. He really was going for it at that point, fearless and going through a process of spiritual death and that sort of reorientation of consciousness. Not just once, but in repeated situations, he changed himself. He put himself in situations where he was almost taken apart and put back together again. So I think within that context, I see him as not only an agent of change, but change itself. Padmasambhava doesn't stay static. He changes. He learns, he engages with elemental forces, and he comes out as a different character at the end of that. In fact, he doesn't have just one manifestation. There are lots of different manifestations of Padmasambhava that have evolved over time, and they range from being a spiritual teacher, a Shakyamuni type character, to riding on a tiger. And being blue, and so he's sometimes wrathful, sometimes it's wisdom. There are a number of different facets, and he changes according to the circumstances. So, in that sense, he's a sort of David Bowie of the of the Buddhist world. He uses a personality and identity, and then he'll move on to something else. So he sort of embodies change, I think, in that context. But if I'm thinking about that in my own terms, that's fascinating and exciting. I think the emotional connection for me, if I go back into my own sort of cultural roots, is that kind of makes him he's a magician, he's a sorcerer, and in my context, he would be a wizard. And I love wizards. I always engage with wizards when I was reading Lord of the Rings. It was Gandalf, or Merlin in the Arthurian stories. Wizards can stand above the world, and they look down. They have a sense of what to do. They have this knowledge, but they don't do it for you. In my understanding of the kind of classic wizard-mortal relationship, what a wizard can do for you, or a sorcerer or a magician, is to remove obstacles, to point the way, to open doors. But it's up to you to make the journey. You're the person that has to do it, but with a wizard as a friend, that's a pretty good start, really. Just setting off on a sort of epic journey. When Padmasambhava meets the demons, the spiritual presences in Tibet, he does not set out to destroy them, and I think that's important. I think an important element of how Padmasambhava sort of creates change. What he does is enter into conversation. So when he came across the demons in Tibet, he got to know them, he talked to them, he found out what they needed. In fact, in some ways, he befriended them. And then what he was able to do was to use their energy, to use the power behind the demon or the elemental force for the Dharma, for the benefit of the people of Tibet, for progress. So his way of working with elemental forces is to understand them and find out what it is that's driving, where the energy is coming from, and then use that energy in a more positive way. So in terms of teaching for me about my own kind of personal spiritual journey, I can, that is in some ways a metaphor. I would see that as a metaphor for, the kind of change and transformation that I want to make and that I'm trying to make. So to extend the metaphor, my mind would be Tibet, unruly, chaotic, all sorts of elemental forces, all sorts of energies going on in there that I can't control, or pop out of nowhere, or pull down the thing that I've just built, which is another famous story. There's no sense of cohesion there without some intervention. The king of Tibet, that could be my ego, this proud thing, this person who thinks he's in control, who thinks he knows what to do, who's trying to do such, striving, genuinely striving, which Trisong Detsen was doing. He wanted the people of Tibet to have a better life. He wanted Tibet to be Buddhist, but not able to affect the change without support and help, and also slightly deluded. And then, extending the metaphor a bit further, inviting this transcendental being in, trying to befriend this wizard, trying to get help from something bigger than the immediate resources available, is the kind of visualization practice, the devotion, the engagement with an archetypal Buddhist figure, or a representation of the enlightenment, which is of the enlightened mind, which is part of my spiritual journey, my kind of going forth. So Padmasambhava represents the practice, Dharma, the external force that can make a change, the catalyst for personal change. So that's the way I think I would sort of internalize the mythical journey of Padmasambhava through Tibet. So that's one way in which he's an agent of change for me, a personal agent of change. I think another element of that emphasis for change is, in order to engage with a transcendental being, in order to sort of enter into the realm where Padmasambhava dwells, and so the Shunyata, the blue sky, Akasha, that's a place that is really difficult to touch with a troubled mind, with a mind full of unskillful thoughts, or remorse, or repetitive rumination. In order to get there, in order to be in a state of mind to engage with Padmasambhava and to have that relationship, I need to work on my own practice in terms of ethics and compassion. I need to be in a fit enough to be able to stand in his presence. I suppose that's what I'm saying. So I see trying to engage in the practice of being in the presence of Padmasambhava as an impetus to take seriously my ethical practice and build on my practice of compassion. In the visualization of Padmasambhava that I engage with, he's described as having both a smile of compassion, and a frown, a serious, stern look. He's looking at you and he's saying, "Get on with it. I know you could try harder, you could do better." There's a sense of determination in the character of Padmasambhava, and a message about putting in effort. So he certainly changed Tibet. I think he also has this kind of mythical context in which he teaches about how to engage with elemental forces, and we're here to engage with him today, and also to bring his presence into this, not just this event, but into the way we engage, I think, or certainly I engage with my practice. And in order to have that relationship with him, I really need to focus on, approaching him in the right state of mind, in the right conditions for that relationship to exist. So those are a few ways in which I see sort of Padmasambhava as an agent of change. And just to go back to him as a character, he is this kind of sorcerer, this wizard, this slightly scary guy, a bit unpredictable. It's a sort of invitation into some weirdness, some paradox, and that for me is also part of reality. You don't know what's going to happen next. You don't know what necessarily is the best means to achieve something, and it can be something. Those means might be quite different. Might end up being something completely different than you thought it was. So there's that element of him that I find gives me excites me really, and gives me that sort of impetus to practice. And I'm also conscious of the fact that if I don't give it enough effort, and if I don't approach him in the right way, he might set my trousers on fire.
about those. I don't know if I want to stand up or sit down. Just going to stay standing. Thanks, Akashasiddhi. I'm actually glad you've given a bit more of the historical background as well. So my talk's going to be very much a personal talk about my relationship with Padmasambhava and Padmasambhava as agent of change. And I need to say, like Akashasiddhi, I've just been ordained earlier this year, so I'm quite new to this. I still feel I've taken Padmasambhava as my sadhana, but I'm sort of still coming to terms with this. It's sort of, because I think historically, for quite a long time, I didn't have an easy relationship with Padmasambhava. For a start, I don't like red. It's like, this is the only red garment I own. I know, I usually don't wear these trousers out of the house, so I sort of put them on. He's always been a bit too, he's a very compassionate character, but he's always been a bit too fierce and a bit too loud for me. When you chant the mantras at the end of the puja, you sort of chant along quite happily, and then the Padmasambhava mantra comes on, and everybody just suddenly does it twice as loud. And I don't know. And he's a very mystical character with mystic and magical powers. And I didn't like this. I don't believe in magic. That's my view of myself. I sort of always seen myself as a rational character or as a logical person, which I now know I'm quite a deluded person. I'm not like that at all. I do quite like. But sort of getting to know that I do like the magic has been quite a journey, and it's been something that sort of Padmasambhava has come into. And I suppose you don't have to like, every figure there is. But I didn't find the whole Tibetan pantheon very easy. The stuff very Eastern, very mystical sort of imagery. Again, I like Western modern art, so I did like all the Tibetan colour and craziness, but I didn't sort of engage with it emotionally or on a devotional level. So I sort of saw the archetypes, but as I say, I didn't have a real connection with them. And even, there's been some sort of Western reimaginations of Buddhist art, but even transposing a Buddhist figure into the West, some of it I liked, some of it I didn't, but I think I was always looking for my own, sort of encouraged to use our imagination, my own sort of archetypes that could fit into something I could connect to. So overall, Padmasambhava wasn't really my kind of guy. But my relationship with him sort of changed. I mean, we've sort of heard that he takes so many different forms, but a lot of his forms are still quite Padmasambhava-y, so he's sort of his figure, and he sits on a tiger, he's wrathful, he's kind. But I've read, but he's also got the ability to change himself into anything, which is I didn't quite realise. Until I read this book, which is The Way of the White Clouds by Lama Govinda, and Lama Govinda, he's a bit like Sangharakshita in the fact that he's from the West, he's German, and he became a Buddhist in the East, a Tibetan Buddhist, and he travelled really widely in Tibet with his wife, sort of recording art and recording the sort of the ways, the life, and the rites of Tibet. And this is very much a travel book, but he's also written a more academic one called, I've written it down, The Foundations of Tibetan Mysticism. Anyway, Padmasambhava is massive in Tibet, so there's quite a lot of him in this book, but there's one section when he writes about the people of a very particular valley in Tibet. It's called the Valley of Poo, which I'm sure is pronounced differently in Tibetan. I mean, they have a very particular devotion to Padmasambhava, so I'm just going, these bits are directly from the book. he says, "To them Padmasambhava was none other than Shakyamuni Buddha in a new form and appearing to men in different disguises, compassionate as well as fierce, according to their needs. He was the special protector and friend of all animals and might even take their shape. Once, when the landscape was covered in deep snow, we heard the song of a bird. 'It is him,' they said with great earnestness." And somehow, but when I heard about this, I never thought of Padmasambhava as this, what I saw like a small bird in the snow. Something in me really softened. It sort of really endeared me to him in a way. And then there's another story he tells on the next page, which is when Christian missionaries first came to the valley. And they're very much welcomed by everybody, invited in and given shelter. They started doing their missionary thing, telling them about Christianity and the story of Jesus. And again, this is directly from the book. When they told the Tibetans about Jesus and his magical deeds and how he had sacrificed himself on the cross for the sake of humanity and had risen from the dead, they accepted this without hesitation and exclaimed, "It is him," thoroughly convinced that Christ and Padmasambhava were actually the same person. Thus, the missionaries finally had to give up, not because they were rejected, but because their teachings were readily accepted as a confirmation of those very truths which Shakyamuni and Padmasambhava and many other Buddhist saints had taught. And I love this. I mean, I don't know if Padmasambhava and Jesus are the same person. I mean, but at the time that was really important to me because I'd always been quite a happy Christian. I was witnessing this transformation of one belief into another, but I was struggling a bit what it meant to call myself a Buddhist, because I was leaving something that had also been really important to me behind, and I couldn't quite work out, I don't know, how I could, I was struggling a bit with both sort of things, but, what does it mean to be a Buddhist? And I could sort of rationally see the similarities and the differences between Buddhism and Christianity, but there was something in the fact that those Tibetans sort of so readily accepted the same truths between these sort of very big, important, and so seemingly different figures, but on such an immediate emotional level, which was a real moment of change. I thought I sort of got faith or trust. I was thinking, well, maybe I can work it out. And on the path for me to ordination, that was a big change. That I thought I can ask for ordination. I can sort this out, whatever it is. So it still took a while because I'm quite a slow mover for me to ask for ordination. But I remember I asked for ordination. It was on a retreat, and we'd done like a cracking Padmasambhava puja. We chanted the mantra for 45 minutes. It was quite epic, and I was on fire. So the next day I asked for ordination, but I was still, it took me ages to make that connection. I was sort of still in my rational mind. I was thinking, well, yes, I was on retreat, and I was in a love mode. The sun was shining, I'd practiced, so I asked for ordination. It was only years later I thought, hang on a minute. We've been chanting the Padmasambhava mantra for 45 minutes. The magic was creeping in. I was thinking maybe there was something there, that was an agent of change at that moment. It just made me laugh because it was literally years later. But going back, both stories in this book sort of made the alien-looking figure of Padmasambhava that had always made me shrink back much more familiar. So it was a bridge between what I was and I was becoming into, and it was also a bridge between the East and the West somehow. I thought if they just so readily make this bridge between, in that sort of Padmasambhava and Jesus, it sort of just provided a way forward for me, and I sort of began to think, if Padmasambhava can take all these forms, what other forms that might appeal to me can he take? And I realized that you can't make him take a form. You can't look at something that you like and sort of will Padmasambhava into being. It's this thing that he takes the form of the thing that at the moment is most helpful to us, and that sort of will help us change in a positive way. And I was greatly encouraged when a few years ago, on Padmasambhava Day, Prasanna Vera gave a whole talk. Maybe not the whole talk, but a lot of his talk was about his relationship with Doctor Strange, which is like a Marvel superhero figure with like a big cloak. And I always really like Doctor Who, so it's important to make that difference. Like Doctor Strange, Marvel superhero, Doctor Who, time traveller. But Doctor Who, like one of the qualities of the Doctor is that he has this complete openness and compassion to anything that is unknown and different. So like some, strange alien or thing might turn up and everybody's scared and wants to get the weapons out. But the Doctor goes, no, we have to get to know this thing. We have to know what it is. We have to be kind to it. We have to make it. So, which to me is a massive Padmasambhava-like quality. So that was one of those archetypes. I thought, yeah, I can connect to this. And sometimes, when I feel a bit worried about something or doubtful, so for me, Padmasambhava is always a good sort of antidote to doubt. I sort of think less of him, but I think of some pictures of like Doctor Who, especially Peter Capaldi, because he's got that sort of fierceness. And it's that thing, what you said, it's like, he's going to say, what are you going to do about it? Or, you can do this. And I just, it's just an ancient, I just feel a bit more brave, I think. Well, I can do this. I can, be compassionate. I can throw myself into the void and meet anything that comes, like the Doctor. Another example is I think sometimes I'm in a grumpy mood, and which always expresses itself in aversion, which hooks himself onto a particular thing or particular person, and they're really annoying. But then that person sort of does something. Usually it's just like a really simple gesture, like they take a drink or they put a hair clip in. I've got a thing about hair clips. Don't know why. Make the compassion arise in me, But this sort of aversion flips into compassion, and again, my rational mind, you can sort of say, well, A happens, they do something, and B, compassion arises. But I've sort of started to more and more believe in this magic that at that moment, maybe Padmasambhava has just taken the form of that person briefly, just to make me more compassionate, to sort of bring about positive change. So I'm sort of more and more trusting in this magic. And as I took Padmasambhava as my sadhana for actually entirely different reasons to what I've just talked about. So I still haven't got a massively easy relationship with him, because you do the visualization in the sadhana, which can be quite full on. And I sometimes still sit there and I think, who are you? But then I sort of hear the bird song, and I'm thinking, oh yes, you can be anything. You can be the bird outside my window. Which, is sort of what not what keeps me going, but it's just that fact that he can be anything that is helpful to you that I'm sort of most connect with in Padmasambhava. And I think that is still an agent of change for me going forward. So.
Ghosaka.
Okay then.
Thank you, Padmasambhava. Well, thank you for leading the day, actually. It's very good that you're doing that. I appreciate that. And thank you for asking me to give a talk. Or well, perhaps it was Padmasambhava via Padmasambhava who asked me to give the talk. And if Padmasambhava asks, there's only one thing you can do, which is to respond, isn't it? So as soon as Padmasambhava asked, I said yes, I would give a talk. I really wanted to give a talk about Padmasambhava and particularly my relationship or my practice and connection with Padmasambhava. So here we go. Hum, in Ergin's land upon its northwest rim, on lotus, pistil cup and stem, wondrous supreme mastery you found. And as the lotus born you are renowned. A ring of many dakinis encircles you, and in your footsteps practicing, we follow you. To grant your blessings, come, we pray. Guru Padmasambhava Hum. So I want to talk about my connection with, I like to call him Guru Rinpoche more than Padmasambhava, but they're the same thing. My connection with Guru Rinpoche in terms of transformation in relation to reciting mantras and prayers of invocation, which is what I've just done. The 7-line prayer is a very famous invocation to Padmasambhava. In it we ask him, following in his footsteps, to come to us, to manifest. So mantras have always been something that I've been interested in, and it's been a very important way that I've connected with Guru Rinpoche, through sound. And there's something mysterious and fascinating about sound and about mantra. I'm drawn towards Guru Rinpoche through sound in many ways. And I like that mystery. It's not rational. I don't think about it, I don't analyse it. It's just a response to the vibration of energy, as it were. But the main thing is that when I recite the mantras, or when I do invocation, when I ask Guru Rinpoche to manifest, I find that it has a positive effect on me. It really affects my energy in my body, speech and mind in a very positive way, mainly. So it changes. It has an effect on my consciousness almost immediately. In reciting mantras, in invoking Guru Rinpoche and saying prayers, it immediately transforms my consciousness. Guru Rinpoche is an agent of change in that immediate way, for me. So I think I've been doing the practice for about 15 years now, maybe a little bit longer. And before that, well, it wasn't the first sadhana practice that I took up. On ordination I was given the Amitabha sadhana. And as we know so far, they're very closely interconnected, and in fact, Guru Rinpoche, Padmasambhava, emanates from Amitabha himself. So they're closely connected. So for about, I think it's 22 years, I've been practicing those two practices. And I do see them as interconnected. I do both of them, in the very broadest sense of sadhana, I mean. Sometimes one more than the other. But in doing them, I think of both Guru Rinpoche and Padmasambhava and Amitabha in the same way, in many respects. So just before I talk a bit about my relationship to Padmasambhava in terms of sound and mantra and prayer, I just want to say a little bit about mantra in general, just to set the context. So in some ways you can't say anything about mantra. It's not about the intellect, it's not about the rational mind. Mantras aren't about analysis and exploration like that. They're symbolic formulas, that's all you can say about them really, in one sense. They're sonic, vibrating, resonating, alive symbols. That's what they are. So you can't say much more than that. What you need to do is to recite the mantra and see what happens. What comes about if we recite the mantra. So all Buddhas and Bodhisattvas have mantras associated with them. All deities have a mantra. And traditionally, you recite the mantra to invoke or to bring about that particular Buddha or deity. So when we chant Om Ahum Vajraguru Padmasambhava Hum, we're trying to invoke, or we are invoking, Guru Rinpoche Padmasambhava. We're asking him to manifest. And like in the 7-line prayer, we ask him to come, practicing, following in his footsteps. We say, come to us, manifest. Perhaps even more profoundly than this, actually. Mantras aren't just a symbol, they are actually the deity. They are the deity manifesting as sound and as energy. Om Ahum Vajraguru Padmasambhava Hum is Padmasambhava. When we say that, Padmasambhava is manifesting. To what degree might vary quite a bit depending on our practice, but Om Ahum Vajraguru Padmasambhava Hum is Guru Rinpoche. So that's quite profound. It's quite easy to throw that out there and just say it. But you can spend the rest of your practice, the rest of your life, thinking about or investigating what that means, or seeing what it means. What does it mean if you chant that mantra like that? What happens? So mantra chanting is central to Tantric or Vajrayana Buddhism, and as we know, Guru Rinpoche is a master of Tantra, and of course he is now a central part of Tantric or Vajrayana Buddhism. Vajrayana is also called the Mantrayana. It's not as commonly referred to as the Vajrayana, but it is known as the Mantrayana. It's the way of the secret mantra, or the vehicle of the secret mantra. What that means, obviously, is a secret, isn't it? So, if you want to know, you have to practice it, and maybe the secret will be revealed. Maybe Guru Rinpoche will reveal the secret to what the secret of the Mantrayana is. And mantra is also, as we've heard, central to sadhana practice. In the sadhana practice, there is a mantra element to it, and you recite that. And well, you see what happens when you recite that mantra. We've also heard that Guru Rinpoche goes under lots of names. He has lots of titles and lots of names. He manifests in many different forms. One of my favourite names for him, one of the favourite ways in which he manifests, he's referred to as the Mantradhara with a flaming black hum, which is quite an image. I really like it, actually. Ever since I heard it for the first time, it has a sort of there's a little frisson of energy that takes place in my being when I say the Mantradhara with the flaming black hum. It does something to me. It fascinates me, and it's alluring. I want to know more. I want to come into relationship with this Mantradhara with the flaming black hum. I'm drawn to it. Of course, well, again, you can try and analyse that and say what it means, but it's probably better just to say hum and come into relationship with it on fire. So I'm going to say what I think it might be about, despite having said that. So hum is the enlightened mind of all the Buddhas, not just Guru Rinpoche. Hum represents the enlightened mind of all Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. in a way you could say, is the enlightened mind, manifesting as a symbol but also as a sound. And in this case it's on fire, so it's burning, a bit like the king's robes and Akashasiddhi's trousers. So why is it on fire? Well, the enlightened mind is, well, as we say in the dedication ceremony, we say the flames that transmute samsara into nirvana. We ask the flames that transmute samsara into nirvana to arise. So the hung is on fire because it purifies and burns all of our ignorance. The enlightened mind transforms our mind. It burns up all of the ignorance, all of the delusions. All of our greed, hatred and delusion are burned in the enlightened mind. So there we have Guru Rinpoche with a flaming black hung, a mind that's on fire, which is quite an energetic image, quite a lively image. So I want to talk a bit more now about the way in which mantra has affected my own personal practice, as it were. Well, the main thing is that it does change my energy, as I said earlier on. When I chant mantras, when I invoke Guru Rinpoche, it changes my energy, and in a very positive way. It does that in a number of ways. Well, the first way is in quite a gentle way. After a good sort of period of chanting the Padmasambhava mantra, my energy can feel quite integrated and quite harmonised. In a way, it's like a very good samatha practice. It really sort of settles down the mind and the energy, and it's sort of stilling and calming. And it's a very good way to prepare for other meditation practice. If you settle the mind down, you can, well, from there you can do your meditation practice. And I find chanting Om Ahum Vajraguru Padmasambhava Om for a period of time, often with other people, is very good in that respect. It settles my mind down and calms it. So it's a very good samatha practice for me. Also, it's a collective practice, isn't it? Today we will be chanting the mantras together. We do it together. You do it in pujas. Sometimes on festival days you just chant mantras. So it's a very connecting practice. And when I chant the mantra with other people, my own individual voice comes together with everyone else's voice. My small voice becomes a much bigger voice, a much bigger invocation to Guru Rinpoche. And in a way, the self is transcended when we do that. Our small little self, or I should say perhaps my small little self, doesn't matter anymore. It's not about me, it's not about how good my chanting is, how loud I can chant. It's about joining everyone else to invoke Guru Rinpoche, to bring Padmasambhava to life. So my little self gets slightly pushed to the side, which is very good. But the main way in which I want to talk about the way that the mantra affects me and affects my energy is that it's very, very energizing. You know, we've heard from our other two speakers about how Guru Rinpoche is very energetic, or can be very energetic, how he can be quite fearsome and wrathful sometimes. So if you chant the Padmasambhava mantra, it's energizing. It really sort of gets my energy going sometimes. And it's back to this image of the flaming black hung. So the mantra clears up, it burns all that dull, heavy energy, removes the blockages. It gets rid of all that sort of dark greed, hatred and delusion, purifying the mind, purifying the body, purifying your voice. And if you do it consistently, it has a sort of a cumulative effect. Chanting the mantra cleanses our energy, purifies us. Sometimes the effect is quite gradual and quite gentle, a bit like the samatha practice. After chanting you can feel quite blissful sometimes. Energy is really good. You know, you're alive, you feel alive. You feel in the world, or I should say I feel in the world. So it's quite gentle, and sometimes it's immediate, sometimes it comes a bit later. Sometimes I find that with metta bhavana as well. Sometimes you can do the practice and you think, well, not much happened there, but then later in the day, the fruits of the practice manifest. And it's a bit like that with the mantra sometimes. But also, sometimes it's not so gentle. It can be very, very direct and quite powerful. So Guru Rinpoche sometimes, as we said, have heard so far, manifests in quite wrathful forms. We've heard about him riding a pregnant tiger. He's got flaming hair, big dreadlocks, his face is bulging, and he's huge, he's really fat. Some might say he looks ugly. He's surrounded in a huge aura of flames, and he's riding on a pregnant tiger. He's probably quite temperamental. But he doesn't care. He's quite happy to ride in that state. You know, if you go towards a mother who's just had children, or an animal, they'll probably like you to try and bite your hand off. But Guru Rinpoche is quite happy to be with that energy. He's quite happy to ride along with that energy and enjoy it. So sometimes he doesn't just gently change my energy, sometimes he gives me a bit of a nudge. And sometimes a bit more than a nudge. He says, wake up. Wake up from your stupor. And it's a very direct. I mean, if you channel Guru Rinpoche's energy sometimes, you might get 50,000 volts of Guru Rinpoche power, which will probably make your hair stand on end. And will certainly wake you up, that's for sure. And sometimes it does wake me up, and I need to be woken up by Guru Rinpoche. So you have to sometimes be careful if you chant mantras. It's easy sometimes just to go along with it and think, oh yeah, it's quite nice. Bounce along with the rhythm. But they're very, very powerful. It is Guru Rinpoche, so it's going to be powerful if you really connect with it. So one important way that I use the mantra is to continue the momentum of the practice. So when you're doing the sadhana, the mantra is in there, but there's also visualization. And like any meditation practice, most of us probably do it for 40 minutes, 50 minutes, an hour, at the most, sitting on the cushion. The interesting question is, how do we maintain that off the cushion? How do we bring that? How do we bring our relationship with Guru Rinpoche into our daily life when we're not sitting on the meditation cushion? Well, there's a very straightforward way to do it, and that's to chant the mantra. So when I chant and recite the mantra, again, there's an immediate connection with Guru Rinpoche. There he is again. He's present, just like that. Om Ahum Vajraguru Padmasambhava. There he is. So it's a very simple way to transform one's energy. It's a very direct way to reach out to transformation and to be transformed. My mind definitely changes when I chant the mantra. My energy definitely changes. So in that moment, transformation takes place. And it's very, very accessible. Over the years as I've been doing the practice, my relationship to the mantras has changed quite a bit. I think I have to sort of confess a bit of naivety and probably a sort of a bit of arrogance and conceit. In some of the early days I sort of was very interested in the numbers, as it were. You know, really chanting the mantra many times, clocking up loads and loads of numbers. Because I'm great, I can do that. I'm the best chanter. I'm going to show my dedication to Guru Rinpoche by chanting more mantras than anybody else. Aren't I good? And, you know, in the Vajrayana, in some of the practices, you know, you have to chant them at least 100,000 times. So, well, that's okay. But it's actually quite hard to chant 100,000 mantras. And that's quite a small number, actually. In some of the other Guru Yogas, when you get past 100,000, it says, oh, well, now you have to do 750,000. So a part of me really liked that and thought, yeah, I can do that. And maybe I thought, boom, if I do that, something will happen. But when you approach it like that, what you usually experience is resistance eventually. Actually, it's not possible to do it if you try to force it, as we've heard already. So more and more these days, as I've done it over time, my approach has shifted more towards being receptive rather than being active, although you do have to be active. You do have to chant the mantra. Is to be open and receptive, to look towards spaciousness, towards being patient. You know, you're calling upon Guru Rinpoche. So, do you get up and walk away when you finish chanting? I find that I need to just sit and be still. You know, he's not necessarily going to appear immediately. Maybe he's going to come in a bit of time. So, you know, I find it really important just to be still, just to be open and receptive and see how Guru Rinpoche manifests. When we call on Guru Rinpoche, when we say, to grant your blessings, come we pray, Guru Rinpoche does respond. He does come. And he comes 100% of the time. He's always there, actually. Again, it's an easy thing to say, but I find I have to have trust and faith and confidence in Guru Rinpoche. When he says he's going to come, if you call him, he means it. And it's my responsibility to be there if he comes. I've asked him, so I should be there. And he also tells us what's going to happen when he does come. He says, you will know when I'm there because your mind will blaze with flames. Your meditation will blaze like a fire. So we're back to a flaming hum again, or burning trousers. So that's when you know when Guru Rinpoche has answered. Your meditation will blaze. Your mind will be on fire. You'll be burning off all that samsaric rubbish. It might even shock me out of my samsaric stupor if I'm open and receptive and I listen. So we need to call him because, well, our minds are stuck in a samsaric stupor. We're not enlightened. We don't have a flaming black hum as a mind. Perhaps we've got a dirty hum, a mucky hum full of samsaric rubbish. And we need to call Guru Rinpoche to help us purify our minds, to take us out of that. So it's not so much that we actually call Guru Rinpoche and he manifests. For me, it's more of a case that, well, Guru Rinpoche is present already. He's there. He's everywhere, and he's in every form. He's always present. He's always there. The onus is not on him to turn up. The onus is on me to recognise that he's there, to be open and receptive to. So then the practice is more about presence. It's more about aligning myself, merging and blending with Guru Rinpoche. And ultimately, it's about getting to the point where there is no difference, where there is no separation between me and Guru Rinpoche. Ultimately, it's about becoming Guru Rinpoche. That's the whole point of the practice, to become Guru Rinpoche ourselves. And of course, that is the ultimate change. There is no change bigger than that. There you have your agent of change. So more and more I do try to align with this and be with Guru Rinpoche. So, in a way, there's no other way to end. I'm really glad that we've got silence at the end. My ego might like you to clap, but never mind. It's more important that the silence is there because, well, Guru Rinpoche might manifest in it. So the only way to round up is to say, Om Ahum Vajaguru Padmasambhava Hum.